do a little bit of an introduction and welcome. Today's webinar is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. This is an interactive training webinar, and we encourage you to ask questions and participate throughout the session. The slides, as well as the link to this recording, will be sent by email after today's presentation. So we'll get started, and as I mentioned, we will be encouraging participation, have some activities, self-care related activities, and we are going to get started. So today's webinar, as you saw in the announcement, is play on words, putting our own oxygen masks on first, addressing multiple domains of self-care for behavioral health providers. We are going to look at some of the self-care strategies. As the saying goes, you must put on your oxygen mask first before you can help others when faced with a crisis or during particularly stressful times, maybe like the upcoming holiday season or the end of the year. Sometimes these time frames can be stressful. So this rings so true when considering taking care of ourselves and addressing our own mental health needs and self-care needs as practitioners. Many times practitioners of behavioral health services have faced many challenges over the last few years, maybe attributed to the pandemic, staff shortages, maybe some adjustment to a remote or hybrid schedule, and maybe neglected or haven't been paying that much attention to our own self-care practices. So we're going to talk about how we can incorporate self-care strategies into our lives to equip you with the skills and information to work with individuals that you support during this time. So thank you for introducing yourselves. My name is Joni Dolce. I work with the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. I've been in the department for a number of years, providing different supports and trainings on the topic of employment and education, motivational interviewing, and also in the area of self-care and practitioner wellness. So let's get started. Today's objectives, we're going to define the 6 domains of self-care. So we're going to look at 6 domains that Poslins and Gall, and I have their reference, identify. They have an article that was really a compilation of lots of literature around self-care for practitioners. And the title of the article, which is really interesting, it's called Dear Mental Health Practitioners, Take Care of Yourselves. Which I think rings so true. As practitioners, we oftentimes don't spend the time to take care of our own wellness and self-care. So hopefully today we'll have an opportunity to identify areas of strength and those that you may want to increase your knowledge of in your own self-care practice. We'll talk about those strategies within each of those 6 domains. And then at the end, we'll spend a little bit of time developing a self-care strategy so that when you leave here today, you have something in hand to kind of help you over these next few weeks, end of the year, or any stressful time. So I thought we would do a quick icebreaker. So on the slide here, you see 3 different quotes that have to do with self-care and wellness and balance. In the chat, choose a quote and give the number and one reason why you chose this one. So the first quote is, just when you feel like you have no time to relax, know that this is the moment you most need to make time to relax. And that was from Matt Haig. The second quote is, as important as it is to have a plan for doing work, it is perhaps more important to have a plan for rest, relaxation, self-care, and sleep. And then the third quote, To experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful. It means that you are capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amid the normal chaos of hectic life. So think about those three quotes, choose a number, and one reason why you chose that quote. I'm going to read through and just name some. Three, because it reminds me that when I'm frustrated, that things aren't, I don't think it, and I think it dropped off there. So please continue that thought. So yes, one, someone said, because it reminds me of that, find a time to take a break or your body will pick a time for you. I love that, Lindsay. That's a great analogy. That's so true too. Daniel, three, I resonate with the concept of peace. One, I have a mantra similar to this that I use to remind myself to take time for myself. Three, it reminds me of the Four Noble Truths. One, it reminds me that I need to relax and not be on the go. One, because it's a reminder to slow down. Everything will always be there. Three, because I need to remember someone else's emergency doesn't have to be my emergency. These are wonderful. And I won't be able to read all of them, but I'll just go through two. It's so easy to push self-care aside when balancing multiple priorities. Having a plan helps normalize this as a daily practice. Absolutely. I'll just go through and read a few more. Experiencing peace is a choice and doesn't come naturally every time it's experienced. Absolutely. Let me read one or two more. Number two reminds me that self-care is important and to be present. Number two, you need to plan in order to make things happen. People do not plan to fail, but fail to plan. I love it. So as you're thinking about these quotes, sometimes it's nice to sort of ground yourself with these important reasons of why you need to take time to relax. That balance is so important. We have to have the balance between doing work and having a plan to rest and relax and take care of ourselves and sleep. And then that peace. Peace doesn't just mean that your life is blissful, but it means that we're all capable of tapping into a state of mind amid the chaos of hectic life. And as we're thinking about the strategies and our discussion today, I also want you to think about ways that you can assist individuals that you're working with, use some of these practices and use some of these skills that you're going to be learning. Even something as basic as this icebreaker, where I asked if you could choose what quote and why you chose that number. Even something like that, if you're working with someone who is in a particularly neglectful time in their life, or they're not paying attention to their self-care or their wellness, it may just help them sort of begin thinking that this is an important area of my life that I need to think about. So as we're going through, continue to think of ways that you can implement this in your practice, in your work as a mental health provider with individuals, and of course, for your own self-care and wellness. So I'm also wanting us to start with a mindfulness activity, something to just help us stay present today, think about what you're learning, think about using this next 90 minutes to really be aware of your own self-care, be mindful of what you need to do to help you prevent burnout, which we'll talk about in the next couple of slides. But one of the breathing techniques is, there's a breathing technique known as box breathing or square breathing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's something that is, there's lots of free resources and different YouTube videos if you wanted to incorporate that into your own life, or also when you're working with someone. But I thought we would spend just a minute or two. It's about 9:10, so maybe we can spend until 9:11, 9:12, a minute or so, practicing the box breathing technique, and I'll walk you through it. It consists of an equal kind of duration, if you will, of both inhaling your breath and then also exhaling. There's been studies done to show that box breathing has been effective at improving people's moods, people less anxiety by using breathing techniques. So this might just be one that you can add to your repertoire of tools. But before you start, you want to sit with your back supported. Maybe you want to sit in a chair. You could sit on the floor. You want to, and I'll walk through this as we're doing this. You want to breathe in for 4 seconds. You want to hold for 4 seconds. Then you want to breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold for 4 seconds. So we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. I'll count, or you can count in your head. So let's start now, and then I'll say when we're going to end. So breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you repeat that in a box or square, if you can envision that, for a minute or so. So let's try it. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. And then hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. And then hold for 4. And this is a strategy that you can use when you're working with someone. What might be a way that you can use something like box breathing in your own life? You could use the chat or unmute your mic.
I've used that form of breathing for several years as a form of identifying when I'm having difficulties with my thought process.
So when you feel like you need to just relax and manage whatever anxiety you might be feeling, absolutely. Sean mentions between appointments. Yes. Before I respond to something that makes me angry. Yes. So if it's something that is particularly frustrating, you can use box breathing or square breathing before you have to respond to help kind of regulate that a little bit. I can use it when I start having a panic attack. It's so good to get oxygen to the brain and just pause for a second. When my brain goes into a fix-it mode, when feeling overwhelmed, absolutely. So think about in your own life, and then also when you're working with individuals participating in services. Someone wrote, when my teenage boys test my patience, LOL. Yes, absolutely. When you feel like you need that just moment to yourself to just reduce your anxiety, to feel less stressed. And you can, like I said, Google lots of YouTube videos and free resources, but I just wanted us to begin today's presentation kind of in that mind. So that was just like a very brief overview. Now let's get into thinking about burnout. In the chat, what comes to mind when you think of the term burnout? Or unmute your mic.
Hopeless.
Stress, having no more to give, no more motivation or energy, overwhelmed, apathy, exhaustion, compassion fatigue, too much to handle that you can't do anything, not wanting to go to work, feels like someone sucked the blood out of me, overworked and stressed. Yes, a lot of those feelings can be attributed to burnout. The authors of the ProQual, which we'll get into, it's a assessment used for individuals who are working in the field. They've defined burnout as feeling emotionally depleted or drained, can result after a period of long-term work-related stress. There's other definitions out there. Holland et al. In 2022 noted that burnout is considered an occupational phenomenon, and that it's suggested to develop as a result of ineffective coping, potentially with job-related stress. Risk hours that impact burnout include hours worked, a greater number of hours in administrative or paperwork, the degree of perceived control over work demands, supervisor and peer support. So it sounds like your responses are very much aligned with what the research says about burnout, and what maybe you've all experienced in the past. Not handling situations the right way, or the way that you normally do, having that stress when I become disinterested or disassociated from my job, irritable, tired, unengaged. How do we know when we are experiencing burnout? How do we know when that's happening? What are some of the ways you can tell that this is beginning to impact in these ways that you just identified in the chat? You can unmute your mic. So having apathy, quality of sleep declines. Yes. So what are those physical manifestations of burnout? Maybe being short-tempered, someone says, not as productive. I've had enough. Get irritated easily, exhausted all of the time, feeling negative. Yes. Dreading to go into work, calling out. You don't want to get up in the morning. When you don't allow yourself to decompress from work. In my line of work, you have to make sure to take care of your mental, physical, and emotional health to avoid burnout, worrying about how I'm going to make it through the day. Yes, so all of those are indicators that we might be experiencing burnout. It's pervasive throughout healthcare. The staff well-being and burnout are related to service delivery and quality of outcomes. It really is rooted in this idea of work-related stress, and it could include many of what you just identified: emotional exhaustion, being cynical or depersonalizing, feelings of inefficiency, right? So many of you identified that, feeling that you're not as good as you once were, or what's happening, my productivity is declining, or I feel inefficient. So we're going to look at how to address these signs of burnout through very specific self-care strategies. It's often difficult for us to notice how stress is impacting us, or if our self-care is slipping, resulting in which results in increased anxiety or the potential for burnout. Sounds like many of you have some indicators there: the lack of sleep or poor quality sleep, short fused, but many of what you identified. This is an assessment that's used. It's called the Professional Quality of Life Measure, and it's from the Center for Victims of Torture. And that website will get you to a very brief, free self-assessment, and it goes through many questions about burnout or signs that someone might be burnout. And it kind of helps you look through what those assessments are. So I went through it, and it'll give you a score at the end. Again, it's very quick, and it gives you a score about your compassion satisfaction. It talks about what your compassion satisfaction score is, and what your burnout score is. It gives you a little definition of what each of it means. So compassion satisfaction, mine was in the high range. So it gives you a little bit of an indication of where you are. And then burnout, it kind of gives you what your burnout score is. Mine happened to be in a low range for burnout. It also gives you a secondary traumatic stress score, and it identifies much of what these scores mean. And then more importantly, it provides you with some resources to get some additional support or get some additional help with some of what you're feeling. And it's very targeted. So it's again, a free self-assessment that's used in the professional realm of when we're talking about burnout and compassion fatigue. And it gives you a very good indicator of where you might be. And even just kind of looking at some of the questions helps you really be aware and be mindful. Sometimes we can't notice what those beginning stages of burnout look like. We might not really know when things are beginning to kind of spiral down into that really serious realm of being burnout. Maybe you can ask a friend if, using a self-assessment such as this, or a trusted coworker, family member. They might help you kind of point out different signs that they might be able to see. If you have a really trusted person in your life who you can have these conversations with, they might be able to help you identify times when you're feeling burnout. Thank you, Domenica. Yes. And you'll also get the PowerPoint to go through, and these are all hyperlinked. So yes, absolutely. So that's something that you can use to really kind of self-assess your wellness and self-care practice. So self-care is described as by Poslins and Gall, who we'll be referencing a lot here today, describes it as attending to one's own holistic well-being. It involves a level of self-reflection and action in terms of knowing what your needs are and making a conscious effort to seek out resources that will foster health and well-being. What comes to mind when you hear the term self-care? What do you think of when you hear self-care? You can use the chat or unmute your mic.
For me, self-care ranges from everything from washing my dishes and cleaning my floors to taking a bath or shower, washing my hair, to going fishing and hiking and other activities I enjoy doing.
So activities you enjoy doing, Daniel, to some more tasks around the house that need to get done in order for your um, you know, just everyday living. Absolutely. Thank you. Taking time to care for oneself, whether it's physical, social, or emotional, resting when I need to, if I have to take a pause tapping into your needs that give you positive mental response before taking care of anyone else. Yes. What are some of your preferred methods of self-care? Daniel mentioned some, including fishing or getting outside. What are some of your preferred methods of self-care? Someone mentioned, I wish I did more self-care. I talk to others about how important it is for self-care, but I don't follow my own advice. Yes, I sometimes feel guilty of that as well. A spa day, sleeping in, playing with my cats, bubble bath, coffee, um, therapy, walking my dog. So think about the time that you spend you engaging in these self-care activities, knitting, spinning yarn and long bubble baths, getting my hair done, massage, pedicure, cooking an awesome dinner, Sabbath, exercise, journaling, gardening. So lots of preferences that people have. Um, so we can identify what it is that what comes to mind when we think about self-care. We can also think about our preferred methods of self-care. What gets in the way of your efforts to properly take care of yourself using many of those self-care methods that you just identified? What gets in the way? Time, myself, guilt. Yeah. Family demands, high expectations, procrastination. So you can think about what gets in the way, low energy, being too tired from work that you don't have the energy to do anything but rest. Yes, so not poor time management. So it's important to understand what is getting in our way. What what stands between you taking care of yourself, whether it's a bubble bath, whether it's, journaling, whether it's uh, prioritizing your own needs over others, or what else has been written in the chat, childcare. So think about how you can begin to develop a plan to address your self-care and those impediments to your own self-care. And we're going to get into kind of that self-care plan at the end of today. But I love this quote. These are the individuals from the Pro-Qual. Exhausted when saying yes, guilty when saying no. This tension is between giving and taking, between other care and self-care. So I think people mentioned in the chat kind of feeling that guilt sometimes gets in the way of prioritizing our own self-care. Being out in nature, yes, going for walks and hikes and rock hounding, regardless of the season. Even just spending 5 to 10 minutes to myself, absolutely. So we're going to look at each of these 6 domains of self-care and provide an overview, and then also provide some specific strategies. But as we go through these specific strategies, I want you to think about your own self-care and also what we just talked about, getting in the way of those preferred methods of self-care. But I also want you to think about how you can incorporate maybe some new strategies, or maybe dig deep, maybe uncover some strategies that maybe you've used in the past that you just haven't, either, like you said, had the time, or these other areas have gotten in the way. Awareness is what we're talking about first. And John Kabat-Zinn identifies mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. It's been utilized in meditation for many, many years. It's been shown to reduce stress, um, other physical illnesses at times. It was first developed in 1979 when we think about mindfulness meditation um, by Kabat-Zinn in stress reduction for chronic illness. However, it's been widely used since then, and its roots are really in kind of the practice of Buddhism, but the practice itself is really non-secular and universal. This apply to the work of those in the behavioral health field? So if we think about awareness and mindfulness, being the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, how does that apply to the work in behavioral health? And use the chat or unmute your mic. Each of those components make for good service provision, absolutely. So keeping track of time and taking breaks, being aware of our signals for the need for self-care, yes. So kind of intentionally in the present moment, not judging ourselves, right? For needing to take care of ourself, being aware in a non-judgmental way that this is when I need to slow down, as Christina here writes. It's easier for me to see that someone I serve is in a different stage of change than I want them to be. Noticing that I'm getting triggered, perhaps, is what Sean mentioned. So what does awareness look like? It's having this knowledge about the field of work, such as really understanding the risks for and the symptoms of burnout and professional impairment. So many of you identified what burnout begins to look like, right? You're aware of when I need to slow down, what happens, my sleep is disrupted. I might have a short fuse. All of those reasons or those indicators that you mentioned earlier, having that awareness. Also, having realistic expectations about the nature of the work we do and the skills to assess the effectiveness of this work. So when we think about having the realistic expectations, what do you think that means? You know, what happens when maybe we go into our work with expectations that may not be rooted in the present reality of the situation? What happens when you may not hold realistic expectations about the nature of the work we do? Let's see. Frustration with reality. You might feel frustrated. Um, Maybe for me, not being so hard on myself for not getting my notes done when I've spent the entire day in the field. Absolutely, Christina, I might feel disappointed. Yeah, so having those realistic expectations, if you're spending the day in the field helping someone, maybe you're not able to realistically complete your paperwork or the documentation. Maybe that's where that kind of awareness of whether or not it's realistic to now spend, much more time. And it does just create this frustration, this discouragement, um, feeling guilty for not getting my work done on time. Yes. So it's important to really have these realistic expectations about the nature of work. If we are in the field all day, or if we're in the field the majority of the week, it is going to be difficult to complete those administrative or documentation tasks. So having those realistic expectations and planning for how to address that. And then having this capacity for reflection on both your internal and external experiences and monitoring of your own needs. So reflecting on what is it that you need, and monitoring your needs. If you need 8 hours of sleep, making sure you're monitoring that. If you need to maybe see fewer people in the week so that you can attend to the administrative tasks, recognizing that and maybe speaking with your supervisor or colleagues about how to go about making that adjustment, but having that reflection and really kind of self-monitoring those experiences. Jennifer just wrote, recognize that your own limitations and give yourself grace and props for due diligence. Understand that we can only do what we can do in the 8 hours of the day we have. Yes, having those realistic expectations. Self-care strategies for awareness, being aware of and present with what you're doing and why while you're doing it. Be mindful. Mindfulness techniques include the breathing exercise that we just did a little bit earlier. You can do other breathing techniques that would be helpful. At the end, I have a 5-minute mindfulness meditation that I'd like us to get to and be able to do today. So using breath work, focused meditation, doing yoga, other mindfulness practices, maybe creative writing, if that's an outlet, using other creative outlets, whether that's pottery or other types of creative opportunities, journaling. Journaling improves well-being just a few minutes a day, writing down each day what you can do, or each day can be a simple way to manage stress or enhance creativity or increase happiness. There are different apps that are designed for journaling that you can download. That could be really helpful, or just using a few minutes a day to journal. Practicing gratitude. So what does that look like? What are ways you can practice gratitude that could be a self-care strategy to address this area of awareness? What are some ways to practice gratitude that you've done or can do? Karina writes, it's hard to create a routine like this. Yes, it is hard to, I absolutely agree. It is difficult to create a routine. But once you begin just a few minutes a day, if you can identify a time in the day that you might have those few minutes, even just writing down what you did that day, even just like quick bullet points of what you did, can be just that sort of way to manage stress. Gratitude journal, Sheena mentions. Yes, having a gratitude journal. Appreciate or notice beauty of nature. Going outside for a walk. When you wake up, make a short list of what we're grateful for. Grooming my horse. Focus on positive and small victories to be grateful for each. Yes, so um, it is a routine, and it is something that you have to start in a small kind of way to begin incorporating that routine into your day. Have people used journaling or gratitude and have been able to see some of the positive outcomes of that? I know each morning I try, and it's not always easy, and it's not always and it's sometimes difficult to really put your mind in a very clear state, but I sometimes just look out the window and I watch the leaves flutter and just kind of sit there and appreciate and be aware of that. Be aware that I'm watching, the leaves, slowly fluttering on the trees, and how grateful I am to be able to sit there and I think through, I'm in a warm home. I'm drinking my coffee that I enjoy, and I'm just watching outside, and yes, it's not always easy, but it is a very helpful way to start my day. It's quiet in here. Are you all done? I've been leaving 1 minute unless I hear someone. Um, it looks like Roy, no, we are going, yeah, we are talking in here. I don't know why you're not able to hear it. I apologize for that. Paul, I started journaling in the morning and working on that routine. Yes, it is something that takes practice and takes time. Balance, distributing one's just I just want to make sure. I just want to respond to someone in the chat who's having a difficult time hearing. Yes, I don't know how to address it. I think others are able to hear. So when we think about balance, remember that work-life balance that we talked about a little bit earlier, particularly that Matt Haig quote that we referenced. The challenges, the challenges that we have in our field are very unique, right? We're trying to remain productive in work. Um, we're trying to manage the stress at home. Having this balance is even more important now with stress that might be going on at this time of the year. Distributing one's attention to various aspects of life, maintaining that sense of equilibrium in both personal and professional realms. Um, what else comes to mind when you think of balance? Work and play, yes. So on a scale from 0 to 10, you can use the chat or unmute your mic if you'd like. Christina said saying no is part of having balance. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate the importance of balance to you? So maintaining that sense of equilibrium in both personal and professional realms. Kind of looking at that quote here. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate the importance of balance to you? You can use the chat. Just going through some of the responses. So 10, 10, 10, 10,000. Yes, I agree. 10,000 has my vote. 10, 10, 10. So many of you, it's important to have this balance. 8. I'm curious, someone mentioned 3. Um, Maybe you can explain just a little bit of why it's such a low number.
During my recovery and during life management practices, I've learned that my self-awareness is my number one priority. That's the one I would give 10 to.
Okay, thank you. Same scale, on a scale from 0 to 10, how would you say you currently practice other and self-care balance? So other would be what we do in our professional lives, right? Our, taking care of others, or even in our othering in personal lives, and our own self. So on a scale from 0 to 10, how well would you say you currently practice other, whether it's professional or personal, and our self-care? So some high, 7, 8, um, 6. Okay, so this kind of a scale, this quick scale to just look at. It's really helpful for us to really think about how are we balancing? How are we kind of in this self-care realm of balance? How are we currently practicing that other and self-care balance? We want to have some sort of framework and guideline. Let's see, it's coming in. So, still kind of up there, 7, 9. So some self-care strategies for balance might be having leisure time. People mention that. Um, Cultivating interests and passions outside of work. Sometimes that's difficult for me to think about, I have lots of interest and lots of passions, but identifying how to cultivate those and how to actually engage in those sometimes takes some thought and maybe a discussion with others, or maybe some, it's reflecting, maybe journaling and thinking about what it is you're interested in. Similar to when we work with individuals participating in services, we might do some values clarification. Think about what's important to me, what are some of my values? How can they not only relate to my job, but how can some of those interests and values relate to other types of interests and experiences and passions outside of work? Sometimes having different variety of tasks in our professional work helps us with that balance. Having boundaries. So making sure that we're, if we have an 8-hour workday, trying to maintain that 8-hour workday. If you're working from home, and sometimes having those boundaries are a little bit blurred because you feel like you're constantly on the clock or constantly able to work. Maybe just a simple, if you're in, another room, physically shutting the door and closing your computer lid could maybe give you that distinct end time of your day. So you're doing something that would indicate to you, maybe it's taking your pet out for a walk at the end of the day, and that kind of signifies to you, okay, my work day is over if you're working from home, and now I'm moving into my personal life. Um, Having a holistic view of well-being. This quote here by Brene Brown kind of sums it up nicely. It takes courage to rest and play in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. Um, Sometimes that's true, right? You meet someone and every person says, how you doing? Oh, I'm busy. I'm so busy, 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 busy. And that's almost the status symbol, and just kind of recognizing that that's not helping in terms of having that work-life balance. Brene Brown also says, play as the core of creativity and innovation. It's vital to human development. Rest and play are as vital to our health and nutrition and exercise. The opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play, she says, is depression. So, having that time to engage in leisure activities. Remember the 8 dimensions of what wellness, if you're all familiar with what those 8 dimensions of wellness are. Occupational is just one dimension, right? There are 7 other dimensions of wellness, including spirituality, social, emotional, and so on. So just a quick question here to kind of keep the chat moving, because it's nice to have this involvement. What are some other self-care strategies for balance that you might have used or that you can think about maybe wanting to engage in. You can use the chat or unmute your mic. So having that balance between your professional and personal lives. What are some other strategies? Connection to a higher power. Yes, Margaret, we're going to talk about that in just a bit. Learning to put your self-care in your regular schedule. Yes, so I think that's kind of a very important point. It just becomes part of your schedule. It just becomes part of your day. That 5, 10 minutes I spend in the morning looking outside, watching the sun come through the trees and seeing the leaves and the trees kind of move in such a, rhythmic way is just part of my routine. Finding other interests besides caring for others. Yes, there are times when I chose to not answer the phone when I have scheduled me time. Yes, so kind of using um, recognizing when that 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever that time is dedicated to you, not answering the phone and keeping that appointment to yourself. Schedule time to meet with friends, disconnect from the phone or computer. Yes. Thinking go to self-care as a normal part of the day, also making it easy to access. I like to run at the gym, which is a block away. So from work, you're able to go take long lunches and go for a run. Yes. Having that incorporated into your daily schedule, spending more time with family and friends. Thank you for all of that. So now we move into the third domain, which is flexibility. Flexibility is very important to self-care. Hasn't really been widely researched, and this is partly due kind of to a really lack of clear definition of what flexibility means. So what we're talking about, it really refers to a number of dynamics and processes that include the practitioner's utilization of effective coping strategies and also the openness and ability to grow from life stress. So in our line of work, we encounter inconsistencies or unanticipated challenges, maybe crises or disappointments with individuals we're working with. Maybe there's, slow progression or lack of success that we're seeing, or just, taking some time, which are often out of our control, right? So having an inflexible coping response to these challenges isn't helpful. Kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, those realistic expectations, right? So having these inflexible coping strategies in response to those challenges, whether it's, like I said, crises or slow progression of success or what it might be, can really have an impact on our well-being and growth. Those unrealistic professional expectations can lead to burnout. So let's take a minute to think about, what does flexibility mean to you? So if we think about, it's the openness and ability to grow from life stress, what does it mean when you think about flexibility? And how do you measure having flexibility in your role as a mental health provider? Taking time to develop new interests when self-care activities feel more like unfulfilling old habits that don't serve us well, ability to adjust to what comes your way, budgeting margin time into your schedule to allow for things outside of my control that come up. I love that. So kind of, let's get back to that one. Budgeting that margin time. So if things come up that are outside of your control, you have a little wiggle room in your schedule to possibly deal with that or manage it. Um, Having and using time management boundaries that serve my needs, how far to stretch stress or worth as a cause to cope, learning to think about another interpretation of the trigger that is stressful or frustrating, etc. Stacy mentions using an erase board so I can change my schedule when needed. So yes, having that flexibility, using that dry erase board to change the schedule. How do you measure having flexibility in your role as a mental health professional? And that might be more of an internal kind of thinking through that. How do we measure having flexibility in our role? And many of it is what you all said, being able to have that ability to adjust if something comes up, or being able to you know, change directions with someone, or, have the opportunity to um, end appointments when they're over, being able to only see or meet one person at a time. Yes, so kind of having that measure of flexibility is so important. Some self-care strategies for flexibility. Um, in order for us to not experience burnout due to maybe some of those unrealistic professional expectations that might be present that we've been talking about as providers. Um, and it's important to incorporate some of these self-care strategies for flexibility. And it might be maybe engaging in professional development on a regular basis, realistic self-expectation. So having those realistic self-expectations, being able to walk away when my emotions take over, someone wrote in the chat, yes, having that adaptability, self-compassion and acceptance. So accepting that some things are just the way they might be, and having self-compassion for that. Maybe you didn't get a chance to, if you're working supported employment, maybe you didn't get a chance to meet with all of the employers that you wanted to for that particular day. Accepting that and having some self-compassion for that, having that adaptability. So let's look at physical health, our fourth domain. Our physical health is critical, since having physical health problems can also have a negative impact on our work as practitioners. Um, Sleep, if we look at self-care in relation to physical health, it encompasses a focus on issues of sleep, exercise, and diet. Stress reduces the quality and quantity of sleep. Some people mentioned in the chat that that's something that's an indicator of burnout in their lives. It really negatively impacts that next day. You may not, if you don't have adequate sleep. Um, Exercise and diet are critical for our well-being. Some physical health problems as a result of the lack of self-care might be fatigue or headaches or back pain, irritable bowel. So there could be lots of physical health problems related to um, not taking care of ourselves. And maybe you all have others and you don't have to write in the chat, but or maybe you can resonate with some of the ones that are listed here. Physically, what kind of happens or manifests when you're not taking care of yourself. Some self-care strategies might be sleep hygiene, right? Having a healthy sleep habit. Um, it might include self-monitoring your sleep habits, maintaining a regular sleep schedule, avoiding going to bed hungry or thirsty. Let's see, we have something here in the chat. Okay. Physical health are critical areas of self-care, and when properly cared for can lead to less exhaustion, right? Greater professional efficacy, lower rates of burnout, higher quality of life. What are some of the self-care strategies, if anything, for physical health that you presently do? Feel free to use the chat or unmute your mic. That, or maybe you use some that are listed here. Walking first thing in the morning before breakfast. Yes, thank you for that. Exercise daily, going to the gym or on walks, yoga, free weights, nutrition, meditation. So we ask a lot to include it in the chat because many times what you might be doing could be really something that someone else could be thinking, oh, wow, I didn't think about that, or I used to do that, and that might be something I want to start doing again. So it's really helpful to hear what others are doing. Walk on a treadmill, breathing and meditating, hygiene, self-care, eating well, work with a personal trainer keeps you accountable, eating well, drinking water, spending time with pets, walking them, cuddling with them, listening to podcasts, morning walks. Yes, thank you. So really helpful. Just started going to local parks and taking pictures. So kind of walking, uh, exercise, cuddling with pets, walking pets, caring for your pets. A lot of that is so incredibly helpful for maintaining your self-care in terms of your physical health. A balanced diet, hydration, exercise, helps reduce exhaustion and promotes greater self-efficacy, including less stress and less aches and pains, fewer sleep problems. Social support is another area, another domain we want to talk about. Social support refers to the resources and interactions provided by others or your connection to others that help cope with stress and stressful circumstances that may come up from a variety of sources. Friends, family, coworker, supervisor. Social isolation is a risk factor for burnout among mental health professionals. Maintaining a network of social support, connecting meaningfully with people you like and care about is so critical to this domain of self-care. It includes sharing your experiences and being able to have open conversations with others, staying connected with colleagues. If you are working remotely, many of you might still have a remote schedule or even hybrid, maintaining and staying connected with your colleagues through other ways that you may not see in person. Maybe it's Zoom meetings or chats on the phone, whatever that might be. Stay connected with friends and family, schedule brief amounts of times to maybe vent. Um, you know, Having those kind of very brief times to have a close friend or a close family member to say, you know what, can I just vent for 2 minutes, and try to keep it at just those, that prescribed amount of time, so you're not just venting and having such that those negative interactions, but useful at times to have someone to vent to if you're struggling or stressed or experiencing some other anxieties. Someone said here in the chat, put the phone in a separate room. I have to make time for fun, normal conversations with people throughout the day. Yes. Some self-care strategies are listed here. Having friends and family and maybe your own personal therapy helps to promote the life balance for the practitioner, their lower levels of stress, greater self-esteem, all of these have been, researched and found to help promote better outcomes in terms of self-esteem and lower anxiety, depression, using avoidant coping less. Having professional support is so critical. Mentors, supervisors, maybe professional colleagues, peers, and if you're in school, maybe professors, creates stronger working alliances, um, possibly higher treatment satisfaction with individuals that you're working with, helps with that work-life balance. And then also that cognitive awareness is improved. What self-care strategies can you use for social support? How are ways that you can connect with others? What are some ways that you've used or can you use or you'd like to use to improve your self-care related to social supports? Therapy? Yeah. Let's see. Monthly supervision with a supervisor, carving out time to have lunch with colleagues, or even just if you're not able to meet in person with colleagues or coworkers because of the schedule or whatever it might be, schedule a Zoom meeting and have lunch, or Teams meeting, schedule date nights. It's a lot of work full time and going to school. Absolutely. Kind of putting it, once again, putting it in the schedule. Join hobby groups like Toastmasters, quilting, or walking groups. Yes, I love that, Teresa. Thank you. Spirituality. Um, so when we think about when you think of considering spirituality, what comes to mind? What words come to mind? I'm seeing so much in the chat about the social continuing, um, close friends to talk to, sister time and to talk. But when we think about the domain of spirituality, what comes to mind? Grounding, faith, interconnection. Yes. So think about what spirituality means to you. Um, the process of getting to know myself, a power outside of myself, meditation. Spirituality is sometimes referred to as the search for sacred, right, in one's life. And the theme is connection with yourself, with others, maybe divine purpose and meaning. This quote here, spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or sense or belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience, and that the greater whole of which we are a part of is cosmic or divine in nature. So we all might have our own meanings of what spirituality is. To me, this in the chat, to me, spirituality is the process of getting to know myself. Yes, connecting with my higher power. Self-care strategies for spirituality might be mindfulness practices. We're going to do a 5-minute mindfulness meditation in just a bit. Reflection on meaning and purpose of work. Prayer. Connection with nature. People are writing in the chat, solo time watching sunsets, hiking with my dog, just being surrounded by nature and beauty, meditation. Yeah, so if you think about your own self-care strategies for this domain of self-care, spirituality, being one with nature, it sounds like is part of what works for many of you. Solo time watching being with my kitties. Yes. Sit outside and listen to the rain. Yes. Similar to my kind of watching the leaf blow, that connection with nature. So, as we're going through all of these domains, really think about, I mean, this 90 minutes was really just designed for you to consider how can I spend be mindful and create those times in my schedule for these self-care practices. And then many of you are currently using many of the self-care presented here. Um, Sometimes it's a good reminder that we need to continue to have that practice in place. So let's think about a self-care action plan. Um, Reflecting on the areas of self-care that we reviewed, what do you currently do well? And you can write it in the chat, or you can just independently reflect. This is part of the self-care action plan tool, which is from the ProQual, which you have access to. And I think someone dropped it in the chat too. When you get the PowerPoint sent back to you, you'll have that to refer to, but this is just part of that plan. Reflecting on the areas of self-care reviewed. What do you currently do well? If you'd like to use the chat, feel free. When I get home from work, I always give myself 15 minutes outside to brief the day. Yes, I'm good at making time for my family and friends. So spend a minute or so thinking about, what do you currently do well? Think about the domains we talked about: awareness, balance. This is a good balance. Someone mentioned in the chat, setting boundaries for self-care, taking care of my physical health, cooking dinner and watching shows. Um, what two areas or practices will you build into your life? So think about what we talked about and what others shared in the chat as kind of food for thought, or could also prompt you to thinking. Taking care of my physical health, someone wrote. So think about, what are those two areas that you would like to build into your life? I have an app called Finch, and it helps me with self-care reminders. Yes. So using different apps that might be helpful. Starting to schedule weekly family night, going for at least 3 to 4 20-minute walks a week just in silence. And then kind of following up those two questions, or particularly the one, what two areas, how will you do this? What specifically will you do, or what will you need to adjust, or how will you add those two areas or practices into your life? Someone mentioned starting a schedule of weekly family night. Oh, I think that was already said. And you can use the chat. It might spark someone else's ideas on how they might do it. But think about, how will you build those in? Will you create boundaries with others so that you can keep that self-care time dedicated to what you need to? Scheduling with family, Sunday dinners. I'm learning to give myself permission to take care of me. I'm setting boundaries to protect my health and well-being. Learning to be kind with my inner dialect. Yes. See, we started a family calendar and have it on the fridge so we all know what to expect for the day or week. Yes. So really think about how you'll do it. Um, And then who will support you? So who might be the person providing support and assistance with what you want to do? Someone mentioned I went into serious burnout last month at work and I vowed that I would pay more attention to how many appointments I will allow in a day. Yes, so that's how you're going to attempt to have that balance. Um, who might support you in that? Just I just want to spend maybe half a minute or so thinking about that. Even if you're only able to think of one area that you can build into your life over the next few months or hopefully for longer duration, as it becomes a routine, really think about how you'll do it and who will support you. So I thought we would end with a brief meditation. It's a 5-minute meditation just to kind of get you ready for your day. Um, Spend a little bit of time practicing mindfulness meditation using this brief video. And again, as a way that you can take this with you, use for yourself, but also you can use it with individuals you're working with. Um, so I'm going to play it. And again, it's 5 minutes. So we'll come back together when it's over, but try to really be present with it and give yourself this 5-minute time into your schedule. And then, Daniel, if I could just ask you to give me a thumbs up to make sure everything, you can hear it and everything. Mhm. Hmm. No, couldn't hear it. All right, let me just see.
Make sure you click that box when you go to share the screen to include sound.
Mm-hmm. I did, but maybe I have to just peek at it. Yeah. Stay with me. I'm here. Let me just. All right, just give me 1 minute if that's okay. Make sure everything is.
To begin this mindfulness meditation, just let yourself get into a comfortable position, whatever that looks like for you. When your body feels ready, you may gently close your eyes. With your eyes closed, take a moment to tune inwards. First, simply noticing your body, tuning into the weight of gravity, the points of contact between you and the surface on which you are resting. What else do you notice? What is it like for you to be in your body right now? As you observe this, you simply accept and allow whatever it is you notice. harboring no judgment, just being mindful, noticing what is with a sense of compassion in your heart and letting it be. Continue to do this now with your breath as well as your body. If you haven't already, begin to tune into the sensations of breathing. What do you notice? Just observe, accept, and allow. No judgment. Just letting everything be how it is. As you stay mindful of your breath and your body with a sense of compassion in your heart. Keeping your eyes closed, you allow your awareness to expand to include the space around your body. It's as if you can sense the air around you, the objects around you, and you just allow them to be as you simply are. There's nothing to do, there's nothing to judge. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Don't judge it. Just return your focus to what is. Being connected to your breath, your body, and your sense of presence in the world around you. You let everything simply be, including yourself. You now begin to let your attention travel back, becoming more and more aware of physical sensations by rolling your shoulders, wiggling your fingers and toes, still being mindful of what is, and taking this present moment awareness with you as you slowly begin to open your eyes back to the world around you. Wonderful job doing this practice. We hope you enjoy the rest of your beautiful day.
So thoughts, was anyone able to really do it? I know I struggled a bit. I almost fell asleep. That's nice. I really, really, really tried hard to do it. And I think I might have to pop it on a little bit later when I'm not facilitating the webinar. But use something like that for individuals you're working with. When you have 5 minutes, it felt very, very nice. I'm gonna just go back to the slide right now. Oops. And talk, kind of finish up today. I appreciate everyone's activity, such high levels of engagement. I hope that you're able to use some of what you identified in your self-care strategy plan to take with you. I'm looking here in the chat. People tried to maintain that connection. I agree. We talked about how burnout can really impact us negatively. Self-care is so important, and neglecting that has negative impacts in many ways. We looked at those 6 domains: awareness, spirituality, balance, flexibility, physical health, and social support. We also talked about some specific strategies for each of those domains, and developing a self-care plan will help ensure that our oxygen masks are on before we can help others safely put theirs on. I do have a quick survey. If you could kindly complete that, that would be great. I'm going to pop it in the chat. And I'll put up my email if anyone has questions, or even if you have questions now. We have a couple, we have 3 to 4 minutes. Here's the survey. We thank you for completing that. I put it in the chat. Thank you, everyone. And my email is some of the resources and references. If you wanted to look at that a little closer, my email is dolcejn@shp.rutgers.edu. Please reach out if you have any questions. And I think that's, I just want to make sure. Oops. I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. Just want to make sure you know that our materials will be mailed, and we appreciate your interaction. So you will get the slides and the link to the webinar when it's mailed out. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, but enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you for all of your interactions with me today, and enjoy the rest of your morning and day. Thank you.
I do have my life management board on my wall. I'm developing a guide to building your own life management